Good morning, everyone. Can I ask you, dear colleagues, to take your seats? Please take your seats. Let's start. I am pleased to welcome the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, to the European Parliament for the annual State of the European Union address. Thank you, dear Ursula, for being with us today and for your engagement with this House. In these unprecedented times, dear colleagues, we need clarity and we need resolve. We need a Europe that takes responsibility for its security, a Europe that makes it easier for businesses and that protects jobs by simplifying our processes and cutting unnecessary red tape, a Europe that is fairer for families, workers and women, that ensures safer streets for our children, and a Europe that stands up for the democratic values that define us on the world stage. When the world too often feels like it is on fire with Russia's aggression against Ukraine, the horrific situation in Gaza and the Middle East, a redefined transatlantic relationship and more engagement of Europe across the world, this Parliament and the people we represent are very eager to hear how Europe can step up with new and bold ideas. And I know that this, as always, will be a lively and energised debate, and that it will be based on mutual respect, protecting the dignity of this House. So, dear President, dear Ursula, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, President Metsola, Minister, honourable members. Europe is in a fight for a continent that is whole and at peace, for a free and independent Europe, a fight for our values and our democracies, a fight for our liberty and our ability to determine our destiny for ourselves. Make no mistake, this is a fight for our future. And I thought long and hard about whether to start this State of the Union address with such a stark appraisal. After all, us Europeans are not used to or comfortable with talking in such terms, because our union is fundamentally a peace project. But the truth is that the world of today is unforgiving, and we cannot varnish over the difficulties that Europeans feel every day. They can feel the ground shift beneath them. They can feel things getting harder, just as they are working harder. They can feel the impact of the global crisis, of the higher cost of living. They feel the speed of change affecting their lives and their careers. And they worry about the endless spiral of events they see on the news, from the devastating scenes in Gaza to the relentless Russian barrage on Ukraine. We simply cannot wait for this storm to pass. This summer showed us that there is simply no room or no time for nostalgia. Battle lines for a new world order based on power are being drawn right now. So yes, Europe must fight for its place in the world, in which many major powers are either ambivalent or openly hostile to Europe, a world of imperial ambitions and imperial wars, a world in which dependencies are ruthlessly weaponized. And it is for all these reasons that a new Europe must emerge. And honourable members, this must be Europe's independence moment. I believe this is our Union's mission, to be able to take care of our own defence and security, to take control over the technologies and energies that will fuel our own economies, to decide what kind of society and democracy we want to live in, to be open to the world and choose partnerships with allies, old and new. Ultimately, it is about having the freedom and the power to determine our own destiny. And we know we can do it, because together we have shown what is possible when we have the same ambition, unity and urgency. I must say I've lost count of the number of times that I was told that Europe could not do this and could not do that, in the pandemic, on the recovery plan, on defence, on supporting Ukraine, on energy security, and the list goes on. Every time Europe stood united and made it. And we need to do the same now. So, honourable members, the central question for us today is a simple one. Does Europe have the stomach to fight? Do we have the unity and the sense of urgency, the political will and the political skill to compromise? Or do we just want to fight between ourselves, be paralysed by our divisions? That is what all of us have to answer. Every member state, every member of this House, every commissioner, all of us. And in my eyes, the choice is very clear. So my pitch today is a pitch for unity. Unity between member states. Unity between European institutions. Unity between the pro-European democratic forces of this House. I'm here, and the entire college is here, ready to make this happen with you, ready to strengthen the pro-European democratic majority, because it is the only one that can deliver for Europe. Honourable members, freedom and independence are what the people of Ukraine are fighting for every day. People like Sasha and his grandmother. Sasha was only 11 years old when the Russians attacked. He and his mother sought refuge in a basement in their town in Mariupol. One morning they went out to get some food, and that's when all hell broke loose. A rain of Russian bombs on a civilian neighborhood. All became dark, and Sasha felt his face burning. He had shrapnel just below his eyes. Just below his eyes. In a matter of days, Russian soldiers stormed the city. They took Sasha and his mum to what the Russians called a filtration camp. Then Sasha was taken away. They told him he didn't need his mum. He would go to Russia and have another Russian mother, a Russian passport, a Russian name. They sent him to occupied Donetsk. But Sasha did not give up. On a stop on the way, he asked to borrow a stranger's phone. And he called his grandma, Ludmila, who was living in free Ukraine. Baba, just take me home. She didn't hesitate a second. Her friends told her she was crazy to go, but Ludmila moved mountains to get to him. And with the help of the Ukrainian government, she traveled to Poland, to Lithuania, to Latvia, Russia, and finally into occupied Ukraine. She got Sasha back. and through the same long journey brought him to safety. But their hearts are still broken. Every single day they keep fighting to find Sasha's mom, stuck somewhere by Russia's brutal war. I would like to thank Sasha and Ludmila for allowing me to share their story. I'm honored that they are here with us today, and honorable members, please join me in paying tribute to Sasha, to Ludmila, and to Ukraine's relentless fight for freedom. Let's stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Sadly, Sasha's story is far from unique. There are tens of thousands more Ukrainian children whose fate is unknown, trapped, threatened, forced to deny their identities. We must do everything in our power to support Ukraine's children. And that is why I can announce that, together with Ukraine and other partners, I will host a summit of the International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children. Every abducted child must be returned. Honourable members, this war needs to end with a just and lasting peace for Ukraine. Because Ukraine's freedom is Europe's freedom. The images in Alaska were not easy to digest. But just a few days later, European leaders came to Washington to support President Zelensky and secure commitments. Real progress has been made since then. Just last week, 26 countries in the coalition of the willing said they were ready to be part of a reassurance force in Ukraine or participate financially in the context of a ceasefire. We will continue to support all diplomatic efforts to end this war. But we have all seen what Russia means by diplomacy. Putin refuses to meet President Zelensky. Last week, Russia launched the largest number of drones and ballistic missiles in a single attack. Yesterday, there was a missile attack on a village in Donetsk, targeting people waiting to pick up their pensions. More than 20 were killed. And just today we have seen a reckless and unprecedented violation of Poland and Europe's airspace by more than 10 Russian Shahid drones. Europe stands in full solidarity with Poland. Putin's message is clear, and our response must be clear too. We need more pressure on Russia to come to the negotiation table. We need more sanctions. We are now working on the 19th package in coordination with partners. We're particularly looking at phasing out Russian fossil fuels faster. We're looking at the shadow fleet and at third countries. And at the same time, we need more support for Ukraine. No one has contributed as much as Europe. Close to 170 billion euros of military and financial aid so far. and more will be needed. And it should not only be European taxpayers who bear the brunt of this. This is Russia's war, and it is Russia that should pay. And this is why we need to work urgently on a new solution to finance Ukraine's war response and effort on the basis of the immobilized Russian assets. With the cash balances associated to these Russian assets, we can provide Ukraine with a reparations loan. The assets themselves will not be touched, and the risk will have to be carried collectively. Ukraine will only pay back the loan once Russia pays for the reparations. The money will help Ukrainians already today, but also be crucial in the mid and long term for Ukraine's safety. For example, funding the strong Ukrainian armed forces as the first line of security guarantees. So we will propose a new program. We call it Qualitative Military Edge. It will support investment in the capabilities of the Ukrainian armed forces. Take drones, for example. Before the war, Ukraine had no drones. Today, Ukraine's use of drones, it is Ukraine's use of drones that is accounting for over 2/3 of Russian equipment losses. It is a reminder of the power of human ingenuity in our open societies. But we also know that Russia is catching up fast, supported by the Iranian Shahid drones. And it is seizing the advantage of industrial mass production. Saturday, in one single night, Russia sent 800 drones to Ukraine in one single night.
Yeah.
So, ingenuity helped to open a door for Ukraine's defense, but raw industrial might, on the other side, may threaten to sweep it closed. So we can use our industrial strength to support Ukraine to counter this drone warfare. We can help transform Ukrainian ingenuity into battlefield advantage and into joint industrialization. And this is why I can also announce that Europe will front-load 6 billion euros from the ERA loan and enter into a drone alliance with Ukraine. Ukraine has the ingenuity. What it needs now is scale. And together we can provide it so that Ukraine keeps its edge and Europe strengthens its own.
So, hi, thanks for letting me know.
Mesdames et messieurs les députés,
Amazing stuff.
l'économie de guerre de Poutine continuera même si la guerre cesse. Cela signifie que l'Europe doit être prête à assumer la responsabilité de sa propre sécurité. Bien sûr, l'OTAN restera toujours essentielle. Mais seule une posture de défense
strong and credible European defence posture will be able to guarantee our security. We have made historic progress in recent years to build our European Defence Union. Earlier this year, we launched Readiness 2030, which could unlock up to 800 billion euros of defence investment. This includes the SAFE programme that is now ready to provide 150 billion euros for joint procurement. 19 member states have already applied. The programme is already at full capacity. That's good news. We are also working to find a way to grant a bonus to those who support Ukraine or buy Ukrainian equipment. This is emergency financial assistance responding to an urgent need. Last week, I saw this for myself when I visited frontline member states. They know best the threat that Russia poses. And there is no doubt, Europe's eastern flank keeps all of Europe safe, from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea.
So yeah, the audio of these can be a bit
This is
problematic
why
because we're
we must invest
running a
in
stream
supporting
for a
it
stream. So
through
I'll see what I
an
can
Eastern
do.
Flank Watch. This means giving Europe independent strategic capabilities. We must invest in real-time space surveillance so that no movement of forces goes unseen. We must heed the call of our Baltic friends and build a drone wall. This is not an abstract ambition, it is the bedrock of credible defence. A European capability developed together, deployed together and sustained together that can respond in real time. One that leaves no ambiguity as to our intentions. Europe will defend every inch of its territory, ladies and gentlemen. In every country I visited, I heard the same message. There is no time to waste. At the next European Council, we will therefore present a clear roadmap for getting new common defence projects off the ground, for setting clear goals for 2030, and for creating a European defence semester. Because 2030 is tomorrow, and it's today that Europe must get ready.
Members, when we talk about independence, we're talking about choosing our destiny.
So a quick thing is that
is what
European
Ukraine is fighting
for. Coordination
And that
frameworks.
is what all Europeans
And it's how
deserve.
they
Because
figure out how
Europe
much they're spending
is an
on what
idea.
and where they're going with everything, just
The
to make it as
idea
simple as
of
possible. For those who don't
freedom
know.
and mutual strength. This was the idea that drove the post-1989 generation, when East and West came together. And it is as powerful now as it was then. And this is why we're bringing future member states closer to our union, investing, supporting reforms, integrating into the single market. We must keep up the speed on this merits-based process, because only a united, I would even say a reunited Europe can be an independent Europe. A larger and stronger union is a security guarantee for all of us. And because for Ukraine, for Moldova, and for the Western Balkans, their futures in our union, let's make the next reunification of Europe happen together. Honourable members, what is happening in Gaza has shaken the conscience of the world. People killed while begging for food. Mothers holding lifeless babies. These images are simply catastrophic. So I want to start with a very clear message. Man-made famine can never be a weapon of war. For the sake of the children, for the sake of humanity, this must stop.
Question is, what's the European Union actually going to do about this?
This is also part of a more systematic shift in the last month that is simply unacceptable. We have seen the financial suffocation of the Palestinian Authority. The plans for settlement project in the so-called E1 era, which would easily cut off the occupied West Bank from East Jerusalem. The actions and statements by the most extremist ministers of the Israeli government, which incite violence. All of this points to a clear attempt to undermine the two-state solution, to undermine the vision of a viable Palestinian state, and we must not let this happen. And, honourable member, it truly pains me to say these words, and I know that for many citizens, Europe's inability to agree on a common way forward is equally painful. They are asking how much worse things must get before there is unity in response. I understand. Because what is happening in Gaza is unacceptable. And because Europe must lead the way, just as it has done before. Our financial support and humanitarian aid far outweigh that of any other partner. Our commitment to a viable Palestinian Authority is keeping the two-state solution alive, and we must urge others to urgently step up too, both in the region and beyond. But, of course, Europe needs to do more. Many member states have moved ahead on their own. On our side, we proposed to suspend parts of our Horizon funding, but this is stuck without a majority. We must overcome this. We cannot afford to be paralyzed. And this is why I will propose a package of measures to carve out a way forward. First, the Commission will do all that it can do on its own. We will put our bilateral support to Israel on hold. We will stop all payments in these areas without affecting our work with Israeli civil society or Yad Vashem. Second, we will make 2 further proposals to the Council. We will propose sanctions on the extremist ministers and on violent settlers.
Some kind of step forward considering what's happening with the settler reclamations and all those
And we will also propose a partial suspension of the association agreement on trade-related matters. I am aware it will be difficult to find majorities. And I know that any action will be too much for one and too little for others. But we must all take our own responsibility. Parliament, Council, Commission. My third point, we will set up a Palestine donor group next month, including a dedicated instrument for Gaza reconstruction. This will be an international effort with regional partners, and it will build on the momentum of the New York conference organised by France and Saudi Arabia. Honourable members, I am a long-standing friend of the people of Israel. I know how much the atrocious attacks on October 7th by Hamas terrorists shook the nation to its core. The hostages have now been held captive by Hamas terrorists for more than 700 days since October 7th. That is 700 days of pain and suffering. There can never be any place for Hamas, neither now nor in future, because they are terrorists who want to destroy Israel. They are also inflicting terror on their own people, keeping their future hostage. Europe's goal has always been the same: real security for Israel and a safe present and future for all Palestinians.
So that person you could see yelling in the background is probably one of the MEPs from the left who has a really big issue with Hamas being labelled as a terrorist
And that means that hostages must be released, that there should be unrestrained access to all humanitarian aid, and that there must be an immediate ceasefire. But in the longer term, the only realistic peace plan is based on two states, living side by side in peace and security, with a secure Israel, a viable Palestinian Authority, and the scourge of Hamas removed. That is what Europe has always stood for, and it is time to come together and help make this happen.
What do you mean by Article 2?
Honourable members, the transition is now hard. I want to speak about competitiveness. I know, but this is a State of the Union, and competitiveness is a central piece of our European Union.
So, in Israel-Palestine, I think
Europe's independence will depend on its ability to compete in today's turbulent times. We have everything it takes to thrive here in Europe, from our single market to our social market economy. But we know the economic and geopolitical headwinds are strong, and I just talked about it. And we have seen how dependency can be used against us. And this is why we will massively invest in digital and clean tech.
I do this once every 4
with
or 5
more
months.
to come in our Future Competitiveness Fund and a doubled Horizon, our research and innovation program.
I think there's evil on both
and
sides.
we are tackling the key bottlenecks identified by the Draghi report.
Bad
That's
guy,
from energy
Hamas
to capital, from
bad
investment
people,
to simplification.
For a reason.
We have held strategic dialogues
The October
with
massacre
key
was an
industries.
evil event. Should have
Cars,
never happened and
chemicals,
was done
steel,
purely because
pharmaceuticals,
Hamas wants to
defense,
stop the peace
agriculture.
process and take revenge
In
against
each
innocent
sector,
Israelis.
The message is the
and
same.
The Israeli military had
To
better ways
protect
of
jobs,
going about
we
what they did,
need to
rather than
make business
murdering
in
a lot
Europe
of innocents
easier.
and leveling a city. And I mean,
A digital euro,
I'm a two-state
for example,
solution
will
guy.
make it easier for
I've always been a
companies and
two-state
consumers
solution guy
alike.
since I started working on the topic of
and the
Israel-Palestine
omnibuses we have put
ages
on the
ago.
table so far will
And I
make
just think
a
it's a
real
tragedy in every
difference.
direction.
Less paperwork, less
And
overlaps,
Israel
less
needs
complex
to stop,
rules.
with all of
Our
the,
proposal will cut
they
8
need to stop the
billion
settlers.
euros per year.
The international community
8
needs
billion
to put
cut
pressure
of
on
bureaucratic
this kind of
costs
activity,
for
and
European
that's
companies. And further
also
omnibuses
the
are on
same
their
for
way,
the
for
destruction
example,
of
on
organizations
military
like Hamas.
mobility
The
or on the
international community
digital.
needs to try to stop them in any way
For
possible.
innovative companies, we are preparing the so-called 28th regime
And I hope you heard that.
and speeding up the work on the Savings and Investment Union. Because we have many high-potential startups in key technologies like quantum, AI and biotech, but as they grow, the limited availability of risk capital forces them to turn to foreign investors. And this is wealth and jobs going elsewhere. And it jeopardizes our tech sovereignty. This is why the Commission will partner with private investors on a multi-billion euro Scale-up Europe fund. It will help make major investments in young, fast-growing companies in critical tech areas, because we want the best of Europe
I
to
should
choose
decrease the speech sound, or that
And
is gone
honourable
down
members,
randomly?
Our greatest asset is the single market. But we all know it remains unfinished. The IMF estimates that the internal barriers within the single market are equivalent to a 45% tariff on goods and even a 100% tariff on services. Just think of what we are missing out on. And as underscored by the latter report, the single market remains incomplete,
Be nice to von der Leyen.
mostly in 3 domains: finance,
she
energy
needs to
and
support her terrible
telecommunications. So we
trade
need
deals.
clear political deadlines. And this is why I will present a single market roadmap to 2028 on capital, on services, on energy, on telecoms, on the 28th regime, and the 5th, freedom for knowledge and innovation. Because we all know the old saying, only what gets measured gets done. Honourable members, this will also support our investment in the technologies that will fuel our economy, clean and digital. Take artificial intelligence. A European AI is essential for our future independence. It will help power our industry and our societies, be it healthcare or be it defense, you name it. So, we will focus on the first key building blocks. That's from the Cloud and AI Development Act to the
we're talking about cloud again.
Sandbox.
Okay, I'm going to just talk over this segment because we've been talking about European cloud for like a decade and a half at this stage.
Because these gigafactories
So,
support
yeah,
our
Palestinian kids are
innovative
starving, and that's
startups,
an
so
evil
that
thing.
these startups
But
can train,
the
develop,
fact
and
that an
deploy
organization like
their
Hamas
models,
committed
their
the atrocities that it did and
next
triggered
generation AI models
the
in
current
these
stage of the
gigafactories.
ongoing conflicts is
And when
also
we
evil.
called on
That's
the
what I mean.
private sector to join forces
And
with us,
the problem is all of that needs to
the
stop.
response
We need
was
to be
overwhelming.
helping.
Later today,
We need to be
I
feeding
will
these
meet
poor
CEOs
children who are starving and
from
these families
some
who are
of the
starving.
largest
We
European
need
tech
to
companies.
put an end to the conflict at the
They will
stage that
hand
it's at
over
right now, but the problem
their
is that there's not enough
European
pressure
AI and tech
as it
declaration,
stands from the
and
European
this is
Union.
their
Because we have a
commitment
weak
to
foreign
invest in
policy, we
Europe's
don't have
tech
the levers we should.
sovereignty, and I'm absolutely
And
grateful
because
for that. This is the way it should go
since
in the
Donald
European
Trump
Union.
won the election, he's the one who's supporting Netanyahu.
And we must also
Which is
take the
funny
same
because a
approach
lot
on
of people
clean
didn't
tech.
want to vote for Kamala Harris
steel
because
to
she
batteries.
was
Europe's
not
clean tech
anti-Israel
sector
enough
must
for some people
stay
like
in Europe.
Hassan and
And we have to
all
take
these weird
urgent
lefty
action.
campaigners.
With the Clean Industrial Deal, we have identified the main hurdles that slow down these sectors. So now we need to speed up with the implementation, because investors, of course, want to know that if they invest, there will be a demand for clean European products on the other end. And this is why lead markets must be at the heart of our action, to spark a virtuous cycle where both supply and demand go up and prices go down. On the supply side, we will launch a battery booster package. This will put 1.8 billion euros up for equity to boost production in Europe. You know that batteries are key enablers of other clean tech, especially electric vehicles. So this goes to the heart of our economic independence.
Okay, I work in the
demand
sector.
side,
The issue with electric
we
vehicles is
must
that people aren't buying
urgently
them
drive demand
because they
for
can't actually
European
find, in a lot of
industrial
cases, enough
leadership
charging
in
infrastructure
clean
to
tech.
actually be able to
And this is why we will introduce a
make it worthwhile.
Made in Europe criteria in public procurement. And when we invest in Global Gateway, for example, we set strong incentives for partners to buy European. I'm convinced the future of clean tech will continue to be made in Europe. But for that, we also need to make sure that our industry has the materials here in Europe. And the only answer here is creating a truly circular economy. So, we must move fast on the Circular Economy Act and move ahead in those sectors that are ready. And finally, we need to keep the speed. So the Commission will propose an Industrial Accelerator Act for the key strategic sectors and technologies. In sum, when it comes to digital and clean tech, we have to be faster, smarter, and we have to be more European.
Yeah, this is why I'm saying the settlers are
Honourable
committing evil.
members,
And
already
no,
today,
look,
low carbon sources account for over 70% of our
Hamas is a terrorist organization. They murdered and
We
raped
are global leaders
innocents
in
and
clean tech
children
patents,
on borders who were at a
better than
peace
the United
concert.
States,
Like, you can't be doing this.
racing
Like,
with China. When it comes to venture
what
capital
Hamas did
for
was
clean
evil.
tech,
What
we are
Hamas and the
catching
allies
up
did are
with the
evil.
United
It
States
triggered another
and
stage of
way
the
ahead
conflict.
of China.
And you can't
We're firmly
justify
on
one
track
act of violence by
to
denigrating
achieve our
another.
2030
I
targets to
mean,
cut
sorry,
emissions
but that's just
by at least
how it is.
55%.
And
This is the power of the European
the fact that
Green
Hamas
Deal,
gave
and we must stay the course on our
Israel a
climate
reason
and
to
environmental goals. This
level
is
Gaza,
a must,
which and
honourable members.
Israel doesn't need more reasons, but if you justify it for them, you're making things worse for the innocents. The fact that there are still hostages being held everywhere is just wrong on both
And
sides.
the science
to be quite fair.
is very clear.
And
the economic and security case is
it's already been
equally
proven.
compelling.
I can't remember where it was
In fact,
unveiled, but there was
this
a document
transformation is
released
central to our push
a year or
for
two ago,
independence.
which proved that Hamas
Because it
actually
reduces
engaged in
our
the October
energy
massacre
dependence.
purely to
Because circular production
stop
limits
any
our
stage of peace
strategic
from progressing.
dependencies. And because it creates front-runner
Yeah.
industries that can export the solutions to others. When I speak to the Global South, from Africa to India to the Central Asia, they are looking for solutions. These are rapidly evolving markets, and the jury is still out for who will dominate these markets of the future. We are the ones who can meet the growing demand for solutions, but it's not a given. And this is why the Commission proposed the 2040 targets, 10 years after the Paris Agreement. I know that many people are concerned about the scale of what is needed and what is ahead. And that is why the transition must support people, it must strengthen industry. This also means massive boosting of public and private investment, creating lead markets for circular and clean products. That delivers jobs and that delivers investment in Europe. Ensuring a just transition for all, for example, with a social climate fund, and securing the global level playing field, notably by promoting carbon pricing. Europe must protect its industries. They are doing the right thing to decarbonize, and they should be rewarded and incentivized. We otherwise risk relying again on imports to Europe, imports for the steel that our car makers need, or imports for the fertilizer that our farmers need. And that means we would be at the mercy of price, volume and quality that others are willing and able to provide. Take steel and other metals. Global overcapacity is squeezing margins and leaving little incentives to pay a clean premium. So this makes it harder for Europe's steel industry to invest in decarbonisation. That is why the Commission will propose a new long-term trade instrument to succeed the expiring steel safeguards. Europe will always remain open. We like competition, but we will always protect our industry from unfair competition. Honourable members, when we talk about competitiveness, we talk about jobs. We're talking about people and their livelihood. So the bottom line is that workers must be empowered if we are to have a competitive economy. And that is why we will propose a Quality Jobs Act to ensure that modern employment keeps pace with the modern economy. And this is important because we know how hard times have been for so many families, how costs have rocketed up, how people are making sacrifices to make ends meet. This is a matter of basic social justice. This is why we urgently need an ambitious European anti-poverty strategy. We will lay out our plan to help eradicate poverty by 2050, backed by a strong child guarantee to shield our children from poverty. And we will also put forward a series of packages on affordability and the cost of living. Allow me to give you 4 telling examples. The first is energy. When the energy costs rise, it is not just a number on the bill. It is every single part of people's life that is affected. So at the height of the energy crisis in the last years, Europe acted. And thanks to that common effort, we quickly managed to stabilize prices and secure supply. We are now on the path to energy independence. But energy bills are still a real source of anxiety for millions of Europeans, and costs are still structurally too high for industry. We know what drove prices up. That was dependency on Russian fossil fuels. So it's time to get rid of dirty Russian fossil fuels completely. And we know what brings prices down, and that is clean, homegrown energy. We need to generate more homegrown renewables with nuclear as a base load, but we also need to urgently modernize and invest in our infrastructure and our interconnectors. This is why we will propose a new grids package to strengthen our grid infrastructure and speed up permitting. And to go with that, I'm presenting today a new initiative called Energy Highways. We have identified 8 critical bottlenecks in our energy infrastructure that goes from the Øresund Strait to the Sicilian Canal. We will now work to remove these bottlenecks one by one. We will bring governments and utilities together to address all outstanding issues, because Europeans need affordable energy right now. And honourable members, a home is not just 4 walls and a roof. It is safety. It is warmth. It's a place for family and friends. It is belonging. But for too many Europeans today, home has become a source of anxiety. It can mean debts and uncertainty. The numbers tell a painful truth. House prices are up by more than 20% since 2015. Building permits down by over 20% in 5 years. This is more than a housing crisis. This is a social crisis. It tears Europe's social fabric. It weakens our cohesion, and it also threatens our competitiveness. Nurses, teachers and firemen cannot afford to live where they serve. Students drop out because they cannot pay the rent. Young people delay starting families. This is why still this year, after receiving your input, we will present the first ever European affordable housing plan to make housing more affordable, more sustainable and of better quality. It will be a European effort anchored in local realities. We need a radical overhaul of the way we tackle this issue. We need to revise our state aid rules to enable housing support measures. We need to make it much easier to build new houses and student residences. And we will also propose a legal initiative on short-term rentals to tackle the remaining issues.
The problem with this kind of initiative
So we need all of
is that
society,
the European Union doesn't really have many levers to pull.
stakeholders to come together.
Can apply some pressure to the member states.
And in this spirit, we will convene the first European Housing Summit to ensure it is at the top of our
force
agenda.
people to sell their houses for less, to make the housing crisis less difficult.
Honourable Member, housing is a dignity.
You can maybe force
it is about
member
fairness.
states to build more housing.
It is about Europe's future.
But
8
then they'll
years
get
ago,
stopped by local
the European
association
Pillar
and
of
local
Social
planning
Rights
laws and all this kind of situation.
Make housing a social right in Europe.
Difficulty.
So it's time to turn
Which means
this
that this
promise
kind
now
of effort
into
doesn't
reality.
necessarily make
The
much
third
sense, and it's
example I
not
would like to
necessarily
highlight
going to
is
actually
cars.
go anywhere.
Cars are the pillar of our economy and industry. They are our European pride. Millions of jobs depend on it. Earlier this year, we gave the sector more flexibility to reach their 2025 targets. This is working. And with respect for technology neutrality, we are now preparing the 2035 review. Millions of Europeans want to buy affordable European cars. So we should invest in small, affordable cars, both for the European market, but also to meet the surge that we see in the global demand. And this is why we will propose to work with industry on a new small, affordable car initiative. I believe Europe should have its own e-car. E for environmental, clean, efficient and lightweight.
We do.
E for economical, affordable for people. E for European, built here in Europe with European supply chains, because we cannot let China and others conquer this market. No matter what, we all know the future will be electric, and Europe will be a part of it.
This is another very annoying situation that I had to work on for about a year.
Must be made here in Europe.
The problem with cheap electric vehicles in Europe is that we already have some. Renault's bringing out a Twingo, and there are a couple of other things that are coming out that cost about 20k. The issue is that the average battery pack costs $4,000, everything else costs a few.
Honourable Member, the final
good few
example
thousand.
I want to highlight.
And we don't subsidize our vehicle
It's
production
linked to
and
food.
exporting like China or the US, which means that
In
our
Europe, we
cars
have
will
access
naturally
to
cost
high
more
quality
in every
food.
case, in every situation. And
That
the
our
European
outstanding
Union
farmers and fishers
doesn't
produce
really
at
have the
affordable
money to be
prices.
able to subsidize
They are also
vehicle
the
production
custodians of our lands
as
and
much as other
oceans,
states
our
do.
biodiversity, the key to our food security. But they are facing headwinds from high input costs to red tape or unfair competition.
Or I should
We're
say we don't have
acting
the
on all
structures in
those
place to
fronts.
be able to do it. But
We have simplified the CAP, less paperwork, more trust. We have ring-fenced income support in the next MFF and made sure that funding can be topped up by national and regional envelopes. But our farmers need fair competition and a level playing field. This is essential. And this is why we have robust safeguards in our trade deal with Mercosur, backed up by funding if compensation is needed. We also need to strengthen the position of farmers in the food chain. For too long, their hard work has not paid off as it should. Farmers have a right to a fair price for their food and a fair profit for their families. We will therefore review the implementation of our unfair trading practices legislation and take action wherever it is needed. And I can announce today that we will boost our promotion budget to launch a new Buy European Food campaign, because we can proudly say that our European food is the best in the world. Honourable Members, when we talk about competitiveness and independence, we must talk about our relations with the United States. I've heard many things about the deal agreed in summer. I understand the initial reactions, so allow me to be as clear as I can. Our trading relationship with the United States is our most important. We export over 500 billion euros worth of goods every year. Millions of jobs depend on it. And as President of the Commission, I will never gamble with people's jobs and livelihoods. This is why we did a deal to keep market access for our industries. And we ensured that Europe got the best possible deal out there. We have put our companies at a relative advantage because some of our direct competitors face much higher tariffs from the US. Yes, their baseline might be lower, but when you account for the exceptions that we secured and the additional rates which others have on top, we have the best agreement without any doubt. But I want also to be crystal clear on one point.
almost nobody agrees
Whether
in
on
that room.
environmental or
It is
digital
very sad
regulation.
for von der Leyen, but whatever.
We set our own standards, we set our own regulation. Europe will always decide for itself. And honourable members, I do not believe in tariffs. Tariffs are taxes. But the deal provides crucial stability in our relations with the United States at a time of grave global insecurity. Think of the repercussions of a full-fledged trade war with the United States. Picture the chaos. and then put that image next to the one from China just last week. China flanked by the leaders from Russia and North Korea. Putin gloating about how Russia-China relations are at an unprecedented height. None of this is a great surprise, but it reflects the changing landscape, and it creates two imperatives for Europe's independence push and its place in the world. The first is that we need to double down on diversification and on partnerships. 80% of our trade is with countries other than the United States. So we need to capitalize now on these new opportunities. And at a time where the global trading system is crumbling, we're securing the global rules through bilateral agreements like Mexico, like Mercosur, or finalizing negotiations on a historic deal with India by the end of the year. We will also build a coalition of like-minded countries to reform the global trading system, like with the CPTPP countries, because trade allows us to strengthen our supply chains, open our markets, reduce dependencies. Ultimately, it is about enhancing our economic security. The world wants to choose Europe, and we need to do business with the world. My second imperative is for Europe to step up where others have stepped away. Take research.
CPTPP, by the way, is the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership.
No political color. It is one of the most valuable global goods. And this is why the Commission announced the Choose Europe package of 500 million euros to attract and retain the best scientists and researchers. And Europe must also take the lead on global health. We are on the brink, if not even at the start, of another global health crisis. And as a medical doctor by training, I'm appalled by the disinformation that threatens global progress on everything from measles to polio.
Again, this is another of those things that we can't really combat, purely because we don't have the structures in place and there's not enough being done to actually moderate this kind of nonsense.
I can announce
I mean, look at Twitter, the shit you see on that website is atrocious.
Initiative, because the world is looking to Europe and Europe is ready to lead. Honourable members, Europe's independence is about protecting our freedoms. And this is very important because these freedoms, this shouting side of the House should listen very carefully. Listen very carefully.
Can you please stop? Can you please stop? Please.
Listen very carefully about the freedoms, the freedom to decide, the freedom to speak out, to move around the whole continent, the freedom to vote, to love, to pray, to live in a union of equality. Our democracy and the rule of law are the guarantors of those freedoms. This is why we have done so much to strengthen our tools and step up enforcement. We built a new rule of law cycle that ensures that problems are detected early and solved through engagement. We need an integrated annual cycle of the rule of law, a common rhythm, clear milestones, and contributions from all institutions. And our focus must be to close the existing loopholes. We have strengthened the link between funds and the respect of the rule of law, and with the next long-term budget, we will go even further. Respecting the rule of law is a must for European funds now and in future.
Oh, this will be why Viktor Orban's threatening to bring down the European Union because of the next budget.
Members, the rise in information manipulation and disinformation, as we hear, is dividing our societies. It is not only eroding trust in the truth, but also in democracy itself. This is why we urgently need the European Democracy Shield. We need more capacity to monitor and detect information manipulation and disinformation. So we will set up a new European Centre for Democratic Resilience. This will bring together the expertise and capacity of member states and neighbouring countries. You obviously are fearing this new centre.
I mean, look, what they need to do is actually apply the DSA. They need to actually start punishing platforms like Twitter for spreading absolute garbage. And von der Leyen needs to stop allying with the far right for certain votes. That will already go quite far in making sure that the far right isn't being emboldened.
I understand that shouting has become a little bit of a tradition. Can you listen, please, to this discussion,
everywhere.
and then you'll have the time to speak?
That's Maltese President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, who is yelling at the far right.
Across Europe, traditional media are struggling. In many rural areas, the days of going out for local paper is a nostalgic memory. This has created many news deserts where disinformation thrives, and this is so dangerous for our democracy. Because informed citizens who can trust what they read and hear are essential to keep those in power accountable. And when independent media is dismantled or neutralized, our ability to monitor corruption and preserve democracy is severely weakened. This is why the first step, listen careful, this is why the first step in an autocrat's playbook is always to capture independent media, because this enables backsliding and corruption to happen in the dark. So we need to do more to protect our media and our independent press. And this is why we will launch a new media resilience program.
I'm fairly sure she's announced one of these every year for the last 5 years.
This program will support independent journalism and media literacy, but we also need to invest to address some of the root causes of this threat. This is why in the next budget we have proposed to significantly boost funding for media. We also need to enable private equity. We will therefore use our tools to support independent and local media. A free press is the backbone of any democracy, and we will support Europe's press to remain free despite your shouting. Honourable members, another important point.
Okay, Ms. Schneider, please. We have been very fair and understanding, but this is your last warning. Shouting again and you leave the chamber.
So funny enough, Christine Schneider is actually a center-right MEP from the CDU in Germany. So you'd expect that she can behave a little better.
But I would like to
Borrow
raise
a bit far from the Angela Merkel days,
very specific topic. And this is the effects of giving our children unfettered access to social media. As a mother of 7 and a grandmother of 4, I feel the anxiety of parents who are doing their best to keep their children safe. These parents worry that when their children pick up a phone, they could be exposed to the wide-ranging dangers simply with a scroll. Online bullying, adult content, promoting self-harm, and algorithms that prey on children's vulnerabilities with the explicit purpose of creating addictions. Too often, mums and dads feel powerless and helpless. that they are drowning against the tsunami of big tech flooding their family homes. I strongly believe that parents, not algorithms, should be raising our children. And their voice must be heard.
So are we banning TikTok?
This is why today I'm here to tell you that I'm listening. Just as in my days, we as a society taught our children that they could not smoke, drink, or watch adult content until a certain age. I believe it is time we consider doing the same for social media. Our friends in Australia are pioneering a social media restriction. I'm watching the implementation of their policy closely to see what next steps we can take here in Europe. I will commission a panel of experts to advise me by the end of this year on the best approach for Europe. We'll approach this carefully and listen to everyone. And in all of this work, we will be guided by the need to empower parents and to build a safer Europe for our children. Because when it comes to kids' safety online, Europe believes in parents and not in profits.
We already have several
members,
forms of this kind of control in Europe.
The most important task is to
France,
protect our
UK, I
democracy.
think Germany as well. Italy,
but to
maybe?
do so, we must also show that democracy offers solutions to
Surely
people's
we should
legitimate
be able
concerns.
to already just take
And
one of our
nowhere is
own
that more
plans and use
evident
those.
in the context of migration. That is why we have proposed to treble
Maybe.
funding for migration and border management in the next budget, so that we can manage migration effectively and protect our external borders. But more is clearly needed. The people of Europe have shown that they are willing to help those fleeing war and persecution. But there is a growing sense of frustration stemming from their impression that our rules are being ignored. That is why we need to step up our efforts. We need a system that is humane, but we must not be naive about it. We must be serious about returning rejected asylum seekers to their home countries. We cannot have a situation where only 20% of those who are not allowed to stay actually leave Europe. We therefore need to agree quickly on the common European system for returns. We have no more time to lose. And we must also ensure that we fully implement the Pact on Migration and Asylum as soon as it enters into force. The Pact is strict but fair, and it will only work if everyone plays their part, member states from the north, the south, east and west. Of course, we will always fulfill our international obligations. We've done it in the past, we're doing it today, and we'll do it in the future. But we in Europe must be the ones to decide who comes to us and in what circumstances, not the people smugglers and traffickers. The smugglers and traffickers are making millions and millions with their cynical, false and fatal promises. That is why we must break their business model. It is true that the numbers are falling, but too many people are still trying to cross the border illegally and dying on the way. We must work together with social media platforms to put an end to the online organisation and advertising of smuggling operations. We must work more closely with airlines, especially on problematic routes, such as those to Belarus. And it is only by going after the money that we will be able to track down the criminal networks and cut off their sources of funding. And we need a new system of sanctions specifically targeted at people smugglers and traffickers, to freeze their assets, to restrict their ability to move around, to cut off their profits. People smuggling is a horrible, criminal business, and no smuggler or trafficker should be allowed to get away with it in Europe.
Yeah, this kind of state in Europe sounds nice, but the problem is that you need more police, you need to reinforce Frontex, you need to do more to actually enable people to catch these
if it matters to Europeans,
criminal activities in the first place, because you can't just randomly apply sanctions to people you can't even catch to make them pay.
We all saw the pictures of Europe's forests and villages on fire. More than 1 million hectares were burned. An area around a third of the size of Belgium. The scale of the damage is enormous. And we know it is not a one-off. Climate change is making each summer hotter, harsher, and more dangerous. And this is why we have to radically step up our efforts into climate resilience and adaptations and nature-based solutions. But we must also give ourselves the tools to respond. And this is why we will propose to create a new European firefighting hub based in Cyprus, which could also support our regional neighbours. We know the difference our civil protection mechanism can make. Just over the summer, 760 brave Europeans were sent to all corners of Europe, literally running towards the flames. And I would like to conclude my speech with a tribute to them. The firefighters, the pilots, the crews, everyone stepped up. And I would like to tell you the story of a group of 20 Greek rangers. They are specialists in taming the fiercest of forest fires. When the fires erupted in the Asturias region, Spain called Europe for help. And Greece answered the call. The flames were so vast, the smoke could be seen from space. But for 5 days, these 20 Greek rangers stood shoulder to shoulder with their Spanish colleagues. As the flames swept closer to the village of Genestoso, they fought day and night to contain the inferno. And in the end, together, they tamed the fire and the village was saved. And honourable members, it is such an honour to welcome one of these heroes today. The leader of the Greek team, Lieutenant Nikolaios Paisios. Lieutenant, dear Nikolaios, your courage is an inspiration to all of us.
Good for him. He did good work, he's been rewarded. He gets a standing ovation from people who really should be applying more pressure to fund more wildfire fighting equipment and stuff, especially nowadays. Hopefully clapping for him will help a lot of these people to wake up and realize we need to give them more money so they can actually keep fighting fires.
Honourable members, this is Europe as one community. This is the Europe that I love and that you love, we all love. This is the Europe that we must protect at all costs, and we must do that together. I want to work with this House and with all pro-European democratic forces to deliver for Europe. I'm working on legislative packages to empower this pro-European majority, and I'm so delighted, dear Roberta, that we have managed to renew the framework agreement between the Commission and the Parliament. This will only strengthen our cooperation. And it will be an enabler for us to work on the real reforms.
Tony took a year and a half.
Because I support the right of initiative of the European Parliament. And I believe that we need to move. I believe that we need to move to qualified majorities in some areas, for example, in foreign policy. It is time to break free from the shackles of unanimity. The point is that we need to make sure that our union is faster and can deliver. Because this is how we can win the fight together, to deliver Europe's independence moments. And let's remember that we have always had to fight for our freedoms, for the generation that fought hard and hand in hand across our continent, to the underground press that kept the flame of freedom alive across Central and Eastern Europe during the Cold War, or the forest brothers in the Baltics who resisted Soviet oppression at every turn. This struggle, this fight, is deeply ingrained in who we are as Europeans. 80 years ago, our continent was hell on earth. 40 years ago, our continent was divided by a wall. But on each occasion, Europeans decided to fight for a better future, to make itself whole and to make the whole strong. And that is what I will strive for every single day with you, honourable members. Long live Europe. Thank you so much.
Now what usually happens after these speeches is that you get the leaders of the various groups who will start making speeches. So I think you've got Manfred Weber
Thank you,
coming
President
up
von der
first.
Leyen. And now we move to the speakers for the political groups, starting with the chair of the EPP group, Manfred Weber.
Who is the eternal Spitzenkandidat who will never become Commission President
Go ahead,
if he
Mr. Weber.
keeps going the way he's going.
Madam President of Parliament, President of the European Commission, dear colleagues, this summer was not an easy summer for Europe. It was Alaska, a missing Europe. It was Gaza, a totally split Europe. It was the US trade deal, not easy, forest fires, Draghi criticizing the economic policy pooh. It was really not easy. And it's now easy to stand here in this plenary and criticize. I think a lot of colleagues after me will do so. They criticize Commission, Commission President, Council.
A very important note.
I will not
Weber is from the same political group and party as von der Leyen.
If you trust in us. And that's why my first message is that people can count on what EPP promised in the election campaign. We voted in Bucharest for our projects, for our priorities. We won the elections. And the Commission is now delivering. A fleet of omnibuses started. A return regulation is on the table. SAFE programme on defence. We have 18 sanction packages and the Tunisian agreement. And the fence in Greece and Poland are protecting our external border. We have illegal migration numbers reduced by 80%. A lot happened in the last month. It's not perfect at all, but we start to deliver, and I want to thank the European Commission for their work. We are attacked as EPP from the left, that we are too right, from the right extreme, that we are too left. But I tell you, we will seriously and decisively continue to deliver. Content, content, content. That's what counts for EPP. Autumn, dear friends, will be a moment of truth for us now in the Parliament. The legislation arrives on our desk, and the guiding principle for us is responsibility. And that's why we will support the US trade agreement. I understood that in the Inter Committee a lot of colleagues criticised. EPP was the only group who supported the outcome of Scotland. I don't like to have 50% tariffs. I would like to talk about 0%, about TTIP. It was opposed by the left in these times when we discussed it. But what is the alternative to Scotland? A trade war with the US? Responsibility means also to stand here and say yes to Mercosur, with a proper safeguards for our farmers. We want to have more of these further agreements with Mexico, already presented, India, Indonesia. We have partners who still believe in a rule-based trade order in the world. Mercosur is for us an anti-Trump agreement to show that rule-based approach works. And if we refuse Mercosur, we push South America to China. I know defending Mercosur is not popular, but it's responsible and it is honest to tell it to the people. And speaking about jobs, last year we lost around 90,000 jobs in the European car industry. 90,000 families. We speak as EPP with trade unions, We speak with the CEOs from the car sector, and everybody tells us we need an ambitious climate approach, but also a realistic one. In this moment of time, whole industries in Europe are dying. That's a reality on the ground. We support an ambitious climate approach for 2050, no doubt about this. But we need a technologically neutral approach, nuclear energy, combustion engine, and we have to screen the legislation on practicability. That is what we have to do, and we have to do it fast. Dear friends, more single market, more flagship projects, more investments, more digital. We all agreed in this House on the Draghi agenda, and now Draghi is asking us, what are you waiting for in this moment of time? Socialists, I have to say, voted in the Ample Committee against the omnibus, for the rejection of the omnibus proposals. And I listened that also, Irache, you said publicly that socialists take the US trade agreement into question. You don't know whether you will support it or not. I tell you, this behavior is splitting the platform. This is exactly what is harming the European agenda. We have to deliver now, and that's why we have to be honest in this plenary now. Prime Minister Fredriksson, a socialist leader, stood here in July and presented the agenda for the Danish presidency. She spoke about competitiveness, about stopping illegal migration and security. Key pillars. She asked us
Is
to
he
be
about to do
strong
the
on
whole
less
left-wing
bureaucracy and
versus
migration.
right-wing thing?
There are two sides of the socialist reality, I have to say. There is the socialists of Sanchez and there is the socialists of Fredriksson in today's Europe. And I hope that we don't see the Spanish political reality spreading to Europe. I tell you, nearly all votes during this week proposed CBAM, Future of Agriculture Policy, Public Procurement, Waste Directive, all votes this week are based on a platform agreement on the committees. That's a reality in our House. It works. Europe does not need another ideological fight in the centre. What we need now are solutions. And we have to act fast, dear colleagues. On the return regulation, Fredriksson again, asking us to be partner for the Danish presidency. On the return regulation, Commission presented the regulation in the first 100 days in office. And it took another 100 days to nominate a rapporteur in the European Parliament. And now we have foreseen the return regulation vote in December, at the end of the Danish presidency. Sorry, dear colleagues, that's not the way how we should work. We must speed up. People ask from us solutions in this moment of time. And allow me to underline also on the historic moment we are in. Ukraine confirmed, the Alaska event confirmed that the red carpet for Putin ends up in the most brutal attacks against civilians we ever saw. That's a reality. And on Gaza, enough is enough. Hamas is a terrorist organization, no doubt about this, but hunger can never be a weapon. The reality of summer, dear friends, in these historic issues is that we are, as Europeans, alone in a stormy world order. Nobody on global stage is currently listening to us. I said it, on Gaza, totally split Europe. So how can we change this? Dear colleagues, the idea that national sovereignty exists is a Potemkin's village. It is not real. Kohl, Mitterrand and Delors understood this reality on economic terms. They created the single market and the euro. They made us strong. European integration not revocable. And now Merz, Macron, Tusk and all the others must create the same for foreign affairs and for defence. To bring the European integration another step forward and make it non-revocable, as our Commission President presented today. We cannot allow Orban and crazy Fico that they turn the European Union into a foolish organisation, dear colleagues. And just a final point.
Is he calling for Article 7?
On the nationalists, because we are attacked by both sides. One word to the nationalists at the end. The nationalists here in this House applaud to America first. They are friends of American tech billionaire Musk. They are friends. Nationalists applaud to America first. And they are friends of American tech billionaire like Musk. They follow the agenda of the tech money. The reality is nationalists are not patriots. They turn Europe into a colony of Silicon Valley and Washington, even worse, of Moscow. And that's why we will never allow this, dear friends, never allow this. We love Europe. We love the European way of life. Europe is not weak. Europe is as strong as we make it. And that's why Europe must lead now. We are in front of a Europeans' autumn of truth. The EPP is ready.
Now, I give the floor to the chair of the S&D Group, Irache Garcia Perez.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam President. President von der Leyen. President von der Leyen, sorry, terribly sorry, but here it has been made very clear who your main enemy is, Mr. Weber and the European People's Party. You did your best. You did what you could today to try to bring a work programme to us here today for all pro-European forces to rally together behind it. You did your best, but now you can see who is responsible for the European alliance and platform not working in this House.
She's going to tag them for working with the far right, isn't she?
Problem has a name, Manfred Weber and European People's
Obviously.
Party. Today, we heard you call for urgency and unity, but the question echoing through the streets of Europe is another one. Where is Europe? Because the urgency and unity which we need cannot come at the expense of ambition or the interests of European citizens. Where was Europe when you signed an unfair deal with Trump? Accepting 15% tariffs without any retaliation is unacceptable. Promising the US hundreds of billions of euros of oil and gas purchases and defence investment without the authority to do so is an abuse of power. You went to Scotland to bury the Draghi and Letta reports and our strategic autonomy under a golf course. Let me remind you where you should be investing. Here in Europe, €800 billion a year in common debt to finance the green transition, digital transformation, defence and the social model. Our position is clear. We will amend the agreement. We will demand that US producers comply with the same standards that we require in the Union, because farmers cannot be the losers in your pact with Trump. And if Trump continues his trade war against our digital laws, we must activate the anti-coercion instrument. Ms. von der Leyen, where is Europe when Gaza is dying every day? More than 64,000 Palestinians killed, 2 million displaced, homes, hospitals and schools razed to the ground, famine used as a weapon of war, children machine-gunned while searching for food. I would have liked to invite Ignaz Bayath here today, a Palestinian child, or one of the families of a Palestinian journalist who has been killed, and those of children killed looking for food, because behind every individual story, Salma, Rahim, Mohammed, the list goes on. There are thousands and thousands of children whose voices we'll never hear again. They died in a massacre perpetrated by the Israeli government. We have waited too long. We heard your proposals. We heard your presentation of proposals that we should withdraw from the agreement. We call for a complete break with the agreement. We welcome those steps, but they come too late. So many lives have been lost. We have to keep up the work. Trump and Netanyahu were talking about building a tourist resort. We need our own alternative, a Gaza facility, because if Gaza dies, the soul of Europe dies with Gaza. Stop the genocide in Gaza. Where was Europe? You made announcements about Ukraine. You talked about what you will do in relation to Russia. What about the €200 billion in frozen Russian assets for reconstruction in Ukraine? Where was Europe in the fight against climate change this summer when part of Europe burned? let us
See,
strengthen our
this
commitment
argument
to
doesn't really
climate
hold
neutrality.
water, in
Mr.
my
Weber,
opinion, because Europe's the single continent, or the
how
European
are we
Union
going to
has reduced
have
emissions more than
industry,
any
companies,
other country in the world, I think.
entrepreneurs on
Or
a territory
entity,
which is
whatever.
being
But,
devastated by the results of climate
It's
change?
a weak
We need
argument, I think, and it
European
leans
affordable
too hard
housing
on
plan,
some
paid
left-wing assumptions
internships
that
for
don't
young
quite
people, a
make
package
sense.
of quality jobs and achievements for women. All these challenges require a budget to match. Ms von der Leyen, Mr. Weber, to conclude, responsibility does not mean jettisoning our values and interests. Responsibility means not making deals with the far right, not seeking allies in the far right, with those who want to destroy Europe. Social democracy has always been and will always be at the heart of a European project, with responsibility and without in any way abdicating responsibilities to take decisions.
Peace over war, justice over genocide, climate action over denial, democracy over autocracy, equality over discrimination. That is the Europe our citizens deserve, and that is the Europe we will never give up. Thank you.
I now give the floor to the chair of the PFP group.
Oh god, it's going to be Bardella next.
I now give the floor to the chair of the PFP group, Jordan Bardella.
You know what? Good on Bardella for turning up for
Merci,
maybe the
Madam.
second time this year
Madam
in the
President,
European Parliament.
Colleagues, President von der Leyen, in the name of millions of French people, I ask you a simple question. What interests are you actually defending? What interests are you defending when you are imposing on France, which is the second largest economy in Europe, in the Mercosur agreement will increase unfair competition for farmers,
do this
and
for
will
4 minutes,
mean
isn't he?
that we will have products on our plates which don't respect the drastic standards you impose on farmers. What you are proposing to cut tariffs on Chinese vehicles, and you're preventing our constructors to make combustion and hybrid vehicles by 2035. And when you want to define the European rules on the energy market, which deprive France of low prices in nuclear, and which destroys the competitiveness of our industry and companies and low-income households, what interests are you defending when you sign in our name a trade agreement with the US, which is against the interests of Europe? Our exports have 15% tariffs imposed on them, but the American exports will come to us without any tariffs at all. If that wasn't enough, you are calling on the member states to pay 750 billion euros on US energy exports, 600 billion euros in investments made here. And France has a high-class military industry. You are favouring American industries. Wines, cosmetics, luxury products and cosmetics are sacrificed. Around us, Canada, the UK, Australia, Japan or South Korea have better agreements than we have. In other words, even the smallest countries are better at defending their interests than you're doing when it comes to the US a few years ago. We were told that Europe would provide strength. We have 450 million consumers in our market. Nonetheless, you gave in on everything.
What is he
almost
talking about?
everything. When it comes to the interests of German interests, you defended national interests. No CEO, no men of state would have signed such an agreement. You, madam, you did this on our behalf. I'm speaking today on the behalf of millions of French people and millions of Europeans who think that the European Union is not defending Europe. the world is a world of strength, and you're talking about you promise disappearance and decline. This history will judge you severely, as will our people.
Merci. Adesso do la parola al co-presidente.
Let me now give the floor to the co-president of the ECR group, Nicola Procaccini.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, President. President von der Leyen. I will start from afar, but only geographically. The military parade of the Chinese leader, dressed like Mao Zedong, holding hands with Putin and Kim Jong-un, is no laughing matter. It reminds us that the world is a dangerous place, a place where regimes make no secret of their will to reshape the global order, even by force. Being aware of this reality does not mean that we should adopt a foolishly muscular attitude, but rather that we should strengthen our values, our economy, our defence and our alliances. We welcome the agreement reached with the American administration on tariffs, not because it's perfect, but because it's certainly better than a trade war between allies who need each other.
It's not wrong.
We must have the courage as Europeans to make the right choices at the right time. The Green Deal was conceived and desired in a different geopolitical era. Today, it is too great an obstacle to European competitiveness. I would remind you that economic development is a prerequisite for having the resources to spend on military defence, welfare and environmental protection. Maintaining the duties imposed by the European Union on its own industry, and even adding 5 new taxes of its own in the new multi-year budget, means going in the wrong direction. It's a tragic mistake. On the other hand, I think we're moving in the right direction on immigration, cooperating with migrants' country of origin and transit countries to stop illegal departures. Now we must quickly define safe third countries and make repatriation an effective practice, not an empty promise. But let me say one last thing. While we're discussing welcoming others here, in too many regions of the world, Christians are prevented from professing their faith. The post of EU Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion in the world has been vacant for a year now. I find this disheartening. President, please act quickly. For some, this may be of little importance, but for us Conservatives, it is very important indeed. Because if Europe doesn't defend the principles that shaped it, it will certainly not be able to defend its interests.
Okay, so the
or its
problem with
borders.
this kind of thing is
Thank
that
you.
would this individual support the same thing and this
Maintenant, je donne la parole.
commission official supporting freedom of religion for Muslims?
To the chair of the Renew Europe group,
Which
Valérie
often
Pécresse.
isn't the case with this kind of person.
Madame la Présidente, Madame la Présidente.
Madam President, colleagues. Madam President, we're losing the people of Europe. We have wealth, we have high standards, we stand up for freedom.
It's true.
But we're losing the Europeans. We're not taking them with us. We're weak when they want protection. Weak with Trump, weak with Putin, weak with China, weak on climate. Madam President, nothing is inevitable. In Renew, we refuse this concept of inevitability. It's about choices. We have to make the right choices, and we have to move on to a more integrated, sovereign, federal Europe which protects. We now face an existential threat. The world is reorganizing itself before our very eyes. We have Russia at our borders. her war on Ukraine is a moment of truth for Europe. In terms of security guarantees, we have met the challenge, but we need to do more. We need to give Ukraine what it needs to defend itself and create a Europe of defence. What happened this morning in Poland with Russian drones only confirms that Ukraine's security is our security. Let us protect Ukrainian airspace. It's not just through force that we will dissuade others from attacking us, but we need to stand up when faced with a hostile world. It is a cultural war, a war of culture. Our way of life, our values, our freedom and our independence are all under threat. And that culture war is not only coming from the East. We are the last bastion of democracy and freedom. We have to have a strong voice in the world, given these international trends. And we need concrete action on the democracy shield, because so much is at stake in the Czech Republic, Netherlands, Ireland, Portugal. Elections are going to be happening, and we face the risk of interference. When it comes to defending democracy, I think it is wonderful that you have talked about DSA and DMA and said that they're not going to be used as bargaining counters. We should stand firm on that, and I urge you to continue standing firm. Madam President, there's another crucial point for me in terms of defending our values. Nobody here in this chamber has forgotten about the atrocities of the 7th of October. Nobody should give the slightest space to Hamas. But nobody is blind either to what Benjamin Netanyahu is doing in human terms in Gaza. And young people are particularly alert to this. Young people in Europe now are facing a generational dilemma because they see what's happening in Gaza and they turn to us. And what we do will determine whether they can have faith in Europe and the European project.
It's true.
And what are we doing as of today? Member states are divided, therefore we have inaction. And that is a source of shame for Gazawis, for Israeli security, and for our young people's values. So yes, Madam President, the Commission should act, and we will defend you. We will defend the proposals which you put on the table this morning, and we would be willing to go further in order to end this catastrophe.
All right, everybody, that was
Madam President.
Oh, this is Valérie Ayer from Emmanuel Macron's party.
Europe's
so French
sovereignty
MEP.
is also about competitiveness, and we have a deep conviction in Renew. We believe that 2026 should be the Draghi report year, and for a year we've been waiting for the kind of response which you gave this morning. There is an economic emergency here now. Our entire prosperity is at stake. So less communication, more regulation. Yes, we need a capital markets union. Yes, we need the initiatives which you've talked about and the calendar for 2028. You say we should act more quickly. Yes, we should act more quickly, and we will support you in that once again. You mentioned simplification, and I think that's quite right, but we also need to look in specific terms at employment, growth, what the Draghi report says. The Draghi report also gives us hope for a Europe that can make its citizens dream with big industrial and technological projects. We should have things Europe-wide, Concorde, Airbus, and we need to look at space too, so that the next AI giant is European too. We have the brains, we have the technology. The only thing we're lacking is European investment in companies in Europe. We're lacking vision, and perhaps worse, we're lacking political capacity. wherewithal to do it. The economy is changing, the world is changing, so our governance rules should change too. Today, we can see we're dragging our feet, we're inefficient. We have institutions that are not up to the task of completing the projects which we've set ourselves. We need an institutional big bang in order to achieve this. And this is not to criticise, but to try to better achieve a delivery of what Europeans want. We need a big convention, urgently. Sanctions,
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid I have to go for another call now, but thanks for tuning in. Remember to subscribe on Twitch, on YouTube and everything, and I'll be posting the video later. So thank you very much for tuning in, thanks for engaging, and see you next time.